Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first writer's workshop that I've decided to host. I'm so excited that I get to present this information to you. And this one is a pre recorded one because no one was able to RSVP tonight. That's totally okay. So, this will be available to Ko-fi members on Ko-fi. At the end of this recording, I'll be posting it either tonight or tomorrow, and it will be available to everybody else a month later. So if you're seeing this for the first time on YouTube, hello. Nice to see you. If you're seeing it on Ko-fi, also hello. My name is Tycho. I am an artist and author and a self-publishing consultant. So I've been doing this for about 8 years, almost 9 years now, and my books have won awards. I've published 9 titles up at this point. Actually 10 now, I guess. My 10th one is being released actively right now. And we decided that for this first workshop, we wanted to talk about showing versus telling. This is a huge issue that a lot of people talk about in the writing world. What is showing? What is telling? You know, the phrase show, don't tell gets thrown around a lot. So let's break it down. I wanted to talk about what it actually means. So let's master the art of engaging writing by talking about showing versus telling. What does show, don't tell actually mean, right? So let's talk definitions. Telling is when you narrate the facts directly to your reader. You are describing word for word exactly what's going on around your character from their specific point of view, whether that's third person, third person, first person, I'm tongue tied, or anything in between. You are just telling your audience exactly what's happening. Showing, on the other hand, is using prose to paint a picture through sensory details, actions, and dialogue. So this is a little bit different, right? An example of this is telling, for example. Let's start with telling. She was angry. This is pretty straightforward. You're letting your reader know exactly what's going on with this character's emotions. Versus showing is more along the lines of her fists clenched and her voice shook as she spoke. That's much more visceral. You can kind of see in your mind's eye what's going on. And it's going to give a lot more of a direct response. The only people who might have a little bit of difficulty are those of us with aphantasia. So if that happens to you, I'm sorry. I promise that this is the better way to demonstrate certain things, right? Showing readers help, or showing in your prose will help the reader experience the story rather than be just told directly to their face about it, right? And there are reasons why these things are important. Showing ultimately will engage the reader. When you are using telling as your predominant method of storytelling, this can be really bad for reader engagement just in general. It's important to pull our readers into the story. We want them to feel immersed, right? You want to create an emotional impact with your reader. Using showing will allow readers to feel what the characters are experiencing, even if you're not writing in first person, right? And if you are writing in first person, the important thing to remember is that you are going to pretend like you have a pair of VR goggles strapped to the character's head. Everything that character feels and experiences is going to be what ends up on the page. It's not just, I'm angry, right? What happens when you feel angry? Where do you feel it in your body? Is there a physical reaction that happens when you're angry, right? All of those things are going to be incredibly important for helping your reader be engaged in that way, right? It's going to make your world feel real, feel very vivid. This is a great way to, again, pull a Bob Ross and literally just use prose to paint a picture directly onto your page in a way that is not, I guess, very info dumpy would be the way that I would put it. Finally, the engagement and the active reading is really, really important. If readers are bored, their eyes are going to read across the couple of lines that you have on the page. They're going to gloss over, and people are going to forget what you're even telling them. I've had several experiences like this reading novels by other indie authors. that haven't had their work appropriately line edited and no one went through and said, hey, this is a little boring or this is a little bit telly. I need you to show me this. And that can be really rough because then that the writer had a lot of heart behind what they wanted to get out of this story, but they didn't execute it in the right way, which had just left me feeling bored. By the time I got done with the paragraph, I was like, what did I even read? I also have ADHD as well. And so that is an instantaneous way for me to go, you know what? Nope, sorry, I can't engage with this story. So we want to prevent that from happening. Now, there's a huge asterisk that goes next to all of this, right? Everyone always says show don't tell. My thing is that there is an appropriate time to do both. That might be a hot take, but you need to use both in my opinion. And there are a bunch of different reasons why, but most of it comes down to balance. There are things that showing is really good at, and there are things that telling is really good at. And there are times to use both, right? Showing is exceptionally good for bringing in key emotional moments. You can use vivid language to really just draw your reader in and make sure that they are invested in what's going on. Character defining actions are great things as well to use showing for, especially if you're using it to describe your character. Instead of saying, for example, Kara has one arm, instead say, the girl tried to do a pull up, but it was not as effective as it could have been because she could only grip the bar with one hand, right? That's going to let the readers know, oh, this character has a disability, without the other characters in the room maybe being like, oh, this character only has one arm, and like putting a massive billboard above the other character. And the same of course applies to things like skin tone, hair, height, those kinds of things. And important settings, you should also paint pictures as well, right? And these are going to be places where your characters are going to go back to them frequently. You do not need to do this with every single place that your characters end up in, because otherwise your manuscript is likely going to become bloated, right? That can be bad. We don't want that. So, where do we use telling then? Right? That's the next question. If showing is good for those things, where does telling come in? Telling is great for transitions and summarizing periods of time. If something is happening where you're moving from one place to another, you do not need to sit and pull a J.R.R. Tolkien, or not a J.R.R. Tolkien, oh my goodness, a Tolkien moment, not a George. I was like, I fused George R.R. Martin and Tolkien together for a second. They're the same being now, it's fine. But Game of Thrones kind of has the same problem a little bit, actually. We can talk about that too. We don't need to pull Lord of the Rings and effectively have your characters like their actions are described to such an extent that every single time effectively that they stop to eat and they stop to breathe. That's going to start to get overloading for your reader. It's not going to be as enjoyable of an experience versus if you montage a little bit, that's going to be a little bit more digestible in that way. Also, too, any kind of backstory or exposition, that's another thing where it's like, can the exposition can it be explained via character action, right? So that's where showing might be useful. But again, if it can't really, or if it becomes tedious to explain it via character action, just tell it, right? My dad left when I was 6 years old. Big, done, right? If you don't need to go into any more detail than that, there you go. That's all you need, right? Unimportant details can also be told, right? A color of a desk that nobody's ever going to sit down at. Maybe it's made of metal. Her fingers wrapped against the metal desk. Awesome. We don't need to go into beautiful painterly detail about what this desk looks like because it's going to be here for about 5 minutes and we're never going to see it again, right? So knowing when is the appropriate time and maintaining that balance. Not every detail needs to be shown. And this can be particularly important when you are trying to remove word bloat, right? I'm having a major issue with that right now, where I'm going through a manuscript that's 136,000 words and I'm trying to get it down to around 120,000. I realized going through most of this that I particularly had issues where I could have just told in instances, right? Because I was so concerned about showing versus telling that I overly described stuff. So now I'm having to go back through and say, you know what, this paragraph, it's more of a transition. It's more of a summary. I could just tell this in a couple of concise sentences and move on to the action versus making my readers sit through this and potentially lose them in the middle of a chapter, which is not what I want, right? Not good. We don't want to do that. So now the question is how? How do we show in writing? We want to paint a picture for your readers, and we're going to use our five senses to do these things, right? Again, VR goggles, glue it to your character's head. Even if you're writing from third person, glue it to the head. That's what we're doing. So we're going to use sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell to get all of these ideas across. For example, instead of the room was messy, you can always try books were stacked in precarious towers, the air smelling of old coffee. That is going to give you the idea that this person, one, probably like me, has undiagnosed and unchecked ADHD and has put all of their stuff everywhere, which is not great. But two, maybe is a little bit of a workaholic. This person works late nights. They like to stay up and read. And then most importantly, they're using coffee to fuel their late night reading madness, right? Action will always speak louder than words. Showing emotion through behavior is going to always be more powerful than just speaking the emotion, telling the emotion on the page. So again, instead of he was nervous, you have he tapped his foot and avoided her gaze. You really got to tap into your own emotions. You kind of have to become an actor in your own book, right? If you were on stage and you were told, I have to relay this emotion without looking out into the audience and saying, I'm nervous, and then delivering your next line, how would you show that? What would your body language look like? And sometimes you can even do meditative exercises to put yourself in that space. Almost like method acting, I guess, would be the way that I would compare that, right? So it's possible. You can do it. I believe in you. The last thing where showing is really important, in my opinion, is in dialogue. Dialogue tags are probably the most overused thing on the whole planet. You get a lot of, I'm going to the store, he said. That's awesome. Can you grab some milk? She asked. Sure. What kind of milk do you need? He said. That's really, really boring. We don't want any of that. A much more compelling way to do that is to, again, show the emotions through action, right? Hey, are you going to the store? She shouted across the hall. Yeah, Daniel threw on his backpack. Is there anything that you needed? Sarah poked her head out from behind, or from the kitchen. Can you grab me some 2% milk? Sarah's face scrunched in disgust. Oh, and don't get me that whole milk you did last time. It tasted like I was drinking heavy whipping cream. That says a lot more about the character dynamic that's happening between these, maybe they're siblings, right? These two siblings. One of them is going to school, the other one doesn't like whole milk. And using those things will tip off the reader to little personality traits that they would not have gotten otherwise if you were just using those dialogue tags, right? Finally, the last good place for this is internal thoughts. We want to know what the character's thinking, because not only do we have the VR goggles, but we also are in here rent free. This is what we're here for, folks. This is what books are about. It's about hallucinating vividly somebody else's life, right? Whether again in third person or in first person. Share what the character is thinking or feeling indirectly, right? And this can be, of course, like reflecting on your own thoughts or your own physical feelings. Like if your hands are shaky and you go, oh man, I wish my hands weren't shaking so bad. That says a lot about what's going on, right? The character can kind of talk to themselves about what they're going through. So here's a couple more examples just to kind of drive the point home, right? Showing, for example, she rubbed her arms and exhaled a cloud of mist, her teeth chattering. We know it's cold because her actions, this character's actions, are showing that it's cold, right? Versus telling she was cold. Great. That leaves the reader with a lot of questions. How cold is it? How is it making her feel? Right? We want to know what this character is doing. Another example, the city was busy. That's just telling. Okay, what if you have a reader who has never been to a big city before in their life? How are you going to describe this to them in a way that is a sensory experience for them, right? Instead, maybe Horns blared as pedestrians weaved through the crowded streets, the hum of chatter blending with the clatter of shop doors. Okay, so now we got like a really busy pedestrian area, right? And then all of a sudden, you got like the guy that's like, I'm walking here. And then that gives a much more descriptive image to your readers, right? So, for those of you who are watching this exercise, and since this is pre-recorded, you can do this on your own time and take your time with it. I wanted to give a couple of ways that you can practice using this method, so that way you can work this into your own writing eventually. So on screen right now, and feel free to pause this at any point and get started on it, pause the video and come back to it later, all of those good things. I have 3 examples of telling, right? And what I'd like you to do is convert these telling sentences into showing sentences instead. So our telling examples are: he was scared, the cake was delicious, and the garden was beautiful. All of these things could be told better in a way that is shown instead, right? We want to be artists. We want to be poets with our words. So if you want to take some time, practice with these little exercises. You can absolutely mess around with them here. If you're on Ko-fi, feel free to drop the information, all of your exercises below this post if you'd like in the comments, or if you are in my Discord, you can also share that information there. Same goes for YouTube. Feel free to leave your responses in the comments below, or if you are in my Discord or you want to join my Discord, the link to that is in the description. So go ahead and pause this video, play around, and then I can't wait to see what you got going on in the comments. Now let's talk about why showing can be bad. All right. This is really, really important because, again, I'm having problems with this recently. I'm having to go through and remove 16,000 words from a manuscript because I did too much. I was off the rails. I was out of control. I overdid it, right? You can overload your readers with too many details. It's very easy to do that. You can bog down the narrative with too much description. That's probably what happened to me. But you can also be too subtle too on the other end of things, right? Being too poetic and not direct enough is a huge problem. If the character stands up and slams a hand on a metal desk, that's what happens, right? Versus being overly descriptive and talking about the chill of the desk on the fist of the character's hand, all of these things. Not that the guy hit the desk, so sometimes you can be direct and be blunt, and that's going to be more effective depending on the action. Because of that, if you're not blunt enough, you can also mess up your pacing. And that might also be something that my manuscript is suffering from right now as well. You want to maintain flow. You want to be able to move your reader down the river without stopping them on every single rock that's jutting out of the river as we go through, right? If your pacing is too slow because you've got too much description in there, people will put down the book. That's just the way that it goes. Right now, our readers, their attention span is the lowest that it has been in a long time. Our readership, people's reading comprehension is falling. People's literacy rate is falling, right? And so if we want to encourage people to read and give them as many people as much accessibility to reading as possible, we got to be mindful of these things, right? Now, this doesn't mean that you should sacrifice your style for the sake of bluntness, right? So if your style is more poetic and more verbose, do it. But just make sure you have a good line editor who's going to be able to keep you in check and make sure that your style isn't taking over your manuscript. An example of overloading would be things like, this is a good one. Her voice, trembling like the leaves of a birch tree in a windstorm, broke the silence with a cascade of fluttering syllables. Now, again, it's beautifully poetic, okay? We love that. We love every single analogy and metaphor humanly possible that we can jam into these things, right? And the thing about using sentences like that is you want them to be the big diamond on the tiara, if that makes sense, right? A tiara is beautiful, But we want to have that centerpiece of that tiara that everyone goes, wow, and looks at that thing right in the middle of it. And it's like this pop of sparkling champagne in the middle of a very umami rich passage, right? What you don't want to have is diamonds, 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 disco glitter everywhere, right? So that people can't tell when you're putting your best sentence forward and they're just absolutely overloaded. It's like walking into a room with 80 million disco balls in it and all of them are pointing directly in your eye. We don't need that. Trim some of those away so that way you have access to the best sentences possible. And it can be hard. That's what I'm having issues with. It's not easy. So let's do another exercise. This is another one that I wanted to give to everybody, just in case you are looking for any other exercises as well. Um, I have a writing contest that I do every single month on my Ko-fi, and you can get details about that below if you want to go to my Ko-fi and find the February writing prompt. I think that doing an exercise like this could be very cool in conjunction with my February writing challenge. So if you're looking to win little prizes, whether that be merchandise from my store like a book or commissions or things like that, think about entering this contest because you might surprise yourself. But for this exercise in particular, I want you to show me a scene. I want you to describe a character entering a haunted house using only showing. That's it, right? Let's focus on sensory details like we talked about before, character actions and emotions, and atmosphere. If you really want to challenge yourself, do this in 5 minutes. And then, of course, take this and apply it to any short story that you like, right? And if you do my writing challenge, let me know below because I would love to see what people have got going on for that as well. But good luck on that. And again, share what you've got in the comments or drop it in my Discord. But either way, we want to be descriptive, poetic, and try and do this in a way that is under 500 words if possible. That's my other challenge to you, is that don't be overly descriptive. At the end of it all, we're going to sum up what our major tips are for showing versus telling, right? I realize I say right a lot, so buckle up because this is this is the presentation format, okay? When we balance these things, what we're going to have is a very nice blend of identifying key moments and being really crisp and blunt in others. Showing is going to highlight moments that matter the most. They're going to be that diamond on the front of that tiara, and the telling is going to be the structure that holds the tiara together. You want to use telling for pacing. Lead your viewers and your readers to the next spot without dragging them through every single detail and every single cool thing in your world that you have. If you have a lot of world building, try and space it out. Definitely don't dump it on your readers all at once because that will slow them down and it will probably make them put down the book. When you're going back and editing, like I am right now, edit with intent. Highlight where showing can enhance immersion, and then also on the flip side, make note, like I am now, where you showed way too much and you need to just cut it down. Just cut it out, just snip and get rid of it. That's just sometimes it's the way that it goes. And then finally, test it with readers. Either read it aloud yourself and see how the flow feels when it comes out of your mouth, because that's the guaranteed number one best way that you can keep yourself in check, or test it with alpha readers or beta readers, depending on where you are in your manuscript. Alpha readers are people who are going to receive parts of your manuscript not expecting it to be polished or finished at all. These can be friends. These can be people in writers groups. Like in my Discord, we have a critique corner where we look over everything. Find places where you know that you're going to get honest feedback on your work, and somebody's not just going to pick it up and go, I like it, and then give it back to you, or I hated this, and then give it back to you, because that's not constructive at all. So find constructive spaces. Find constructive spaces and look for people who are going to help you with your work rather than not. You want to make sure that when you are asking for feedback, that you're looking for feedback specifically on emotional impact and clarity. Because if your readers are confused, that's a bad place to be. So, the final takeaway of this is that showing equals immersion. It will help readers feel like they are in the story. You want people to forget that this world around us exists. Telling is efficiency. You want to use it wisely to maintain your pacing and help your reader get from one beautifully immersive moment to the next. Practice is going to make perfect. You're going to end up rewriting stuff a million times. That's how I feel about this current manuscript that I'm working on. I've been working on it since 2018. It just keeps going. I just keep revising it. Parts get added, parts get taken away, and now we're kind of coming to the end of that phase. But sometimes, you have to like spruce up your little baby. You made a little baby, and you got to make sure it looks good. So taking the time to make it polished is going to only help you in the long run. And finally, balance is key. Maintaining both techniques is huge. So don't ever listen to anybody that tells you that showing is the only way to go or telling is the only way to go. Because if you only show what you're going to get is a Jules Verne novel, it's going to be like the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea problem, where all of a sudden you're very aware at the end of the book how submarines work, and you did not want to know how submarines worked that bad. If you only tell, you might have an opposite issue where your story goes by so quickly, your readers are left wanting more. So thank you so much for everybody who hung out and listened to this. This is a completely different format that I normally do for my videos. And hopefully if you checked this out on YouTube or on Ko-fi, you learned something. If you ever want to participate in these discussions in the future and you want to do them live, you can follow me on my Ko-fi account. And when these events go out, I'll make announcements for them. Effectively, you can sign up for 1 month of a membership and then cancel right afterward, and you'll have access to this when we do these events live. Same thing with the writing contest. If you want to participate, sign up for the tier that you want to access the writing contest, and then submit, and then cancel. And then that's totally fine. And you can just do that as many times as you want or as little as you want. And it's really flexible. So it's very cool. Ko-fi is a very cool place to be. It helps support me and helps get you guys educational content like this. If you found this video helpful and you are over on the YouTube side, be sure to like the video and subscribe so that you can get more educational content like this on writing and publishing and maybe even art, who knows, later on in the future. If you want to keep up with me on social media and join the writing groups, all that information is down in the Discord. And the last thing that I'm going to do is test out this button because I've been wanting to push it the entire presentation. It did not work, and now I'm sad. I was going to hit a confetti button. They said I have a confetti button. They lied to me. It worked when I wasn't recording. But thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Actually, I'll back up over here. If you have any questions, let's talk about it. Let me know in the comments. What is the biggest challenge that you face when showing versus telling? Let me know. And thanks so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. Feel free to send any questions to me via a DM on any of my active social media below, or let me know in the comments. I told you to do a bunch of different things. Now the world is your oyster. Yeah, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully you learned something, and now we can make our writing even stronger. Good luck on your manuscript.